أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Quick show of hands here. Who's under 16? If you're under 16, raise your hands. That's like 5, 6. Who's under 18? A few more. Under 50? Actually, quite a lot of people here now. People are shy. Okay, fine. Okay. So, for those of us who are still at school, I want you to think of your best friend at school. Who's your best friend at school? Picture them in your mind. Yeah? Are you good to them? Would you like to think that they would say, he is also my best friend? You tell me. What's your best friend? What's his name?
Rahab.
Rahab? Are you good to him?
Yeah.
Does he say that he's your best friend?
I don't know.
You don't know. You'd like to think he would, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
You'd like to think you had a very good bond. You'd like to think you had a very, very good relationship. You know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He gives us challenges and tests from areas that we don't see, from places that we've never been before. And my journey to Islam begins with a Muslim boy being sent to a Catholic school. Yeah, so one Muslim in a year of 180 people, and he was one of two Muslims, and him and one other boy in his year, in my year, were Muslim. Everyone else was non-Muslim. And they didn't know that each other was Muslims, so they were kind of on their own. So I grew up in a Catholic family. So the usual things that Catholics do, Christmas, Easter, these kinds of celebrations, things which are fun, things which it's nice and easy to say you're a Catholic because it's just all about celebration really. It's not something difficult. It's not like in Islam where someone has to ask you questions and you have to explain why you carry that opinion. So anyway, Catholic school. I went to a Catholic primary school and a Catholic secondary school. So I was very, very used to being around a very homogeneous community. That means everyone's the same. Everyone else is a Catholic. Very few of anybody else there. Very few Hindus, very few Muslims. Never really had to interact with them. And I got to the age of about 15, and this boy, he joined my school. And initially, I wasn't very nice to him. I didn't have anything, I didn't like him. The teacher said, here's the new boy, you have to show him around. I think I said something like, show yourself around or something. I wasn't nice to him at all. I had very bad manners towards him. Mostly because I had my own friends. I didn't need more friends. I thought I saw him as a bit of a burden. But actually, this young boy, he made a very big impression on me. A very, very big impression. And for similar reasons that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam made an impression on other people. He had very good manners. And not just that he would be your friend one minute and then gossip about you another. Genuinely, he had good manners. He was good at sport. He was respectful towards people. He didn't use bad language. He didn't swear. He was good to his parents. He had some qualities that I really quite liked, actually. I felt I could trust him. If I told him something secret, he wouldn't tell anyone else. So I didn't know anything about his Islam, but I knew about his qualities. I knew about things that we know now. I know now from Islam, but then I just thought he was a good guy. He was he was safe to be around him. He was the kind of guy who always had the newest phone, but he wouldn't brag about it. He would just say, it's just a phone, no big deal. No big deal. He was very, very, alhamdulillah, he's very, very humble. So naturally we started to discuss, and I thought he's easy. I've just found out he's Muslim, don't worry, I'll make him do all the stuff he's not supposed to do. I used to try to get him to drink alcohol. I used to try to make him eat pork. I used to try and get him to have girlfriends. I used to try and make him do all the worst stuff you can think of. And it was always confusing because he would never do it. It was really, really, really hard to make him do the wrong thing. So it was Ramadan, he was fasting, he was still doing his sport, he was very active. And I said to him, bro, you know, if I give you this water, yeah, as an example, I would say to him, you're really thirsty, aren't you? And he'd say, yeah, but it's okay. And I say, but just have some water then. It's really nice. It's ice cold. No, I'm fasting. You're fasting? Yeah, I'm fasting. Okay. What if I give you this water and £5? Now, for a 16-year-old, £5 probably isn't that much. So he said, nah. I thought, okay, I'll increase it. £50. He says no to me. That's a lot of money. Okay, £100. Now, when you're 16, £100 buys you a lot of stuff. He still said no. I said, all right, all the money in my bank account, you can have it all, just if you have a little bit of water. I wanted him to do something that I knew he wasn't allowed to do because of his religion. He still said no. I couldn't make him do these things. It was very, very difficult, and I was frustrated with him, but I kind of admired his good qualities as well. He wouldn't compromise on his Islam. He wouldn't compromise it. So we started to debate, and he would ask me very, very simple questions. Very simple questions. Islam is the haqq. There is nothing about Islam where there's a confusion. There's nothing about Islam where maybe Allah is wrong. SubhanAllah. Everything about Islam is correct. Every last word in every ayah. So he would say to me, "You're a Christian?" I would say yes. He said, "Okay, so how many gods do you believe in?" And I would say, "Well, only one." He would say, "But you believe in the Trinity." Well, yes, I believe in the Trinity. So in the Trinity there is God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit. Yeah? 1, 2, 3. And I would say, "Yeah, that's right." He said, "That's 3 gods then, isn't it?" And I said, No, it's one. Let me try and explain. So we would go on for hours and hours, and I would try and explain. And in the end I was saying to him, "I don't think you understand." And his reply to me was, No, I don't think you understand." And we had many discussions like this. And we would discuss on the phone, at his house, my house, in school, out of school, whilst playing football, whilst not playing football. We debated so much about Islam that his mother said, "One day, either Anton will become Muslim or my son will become a Catholic." That's how much we debated. But at the same time, his mother had a lot of trust that he was equipped with the right answers to give me so that I would be more clear in my own thinking. So, something which really, really struck me about his argumentation, about his discussion, was that it was very, very easy for him to prove that you could say for sure there was a creator. I got to the point where I was saying to him, "You can't prove there's a God. I'm a Catholic, but you can't prove there's a God." And he would say, "Well, actually you can, and this is how." And he explained to me how. And I was very, very impressed. Now at that point, I couldn't be a Catholic anymore. I wasn't a Muslim, but I wasn't a Catholic either. I was somewhere in between, this kind of no man's land. Yeah. And then he presented to me the argument that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives to us in the Quran. Okay, trick question time. You. What's your name?
Ahmed.
Ahmed. Okay, I've got a trick question for you. How many times has Allah mistakenly used a word in the Quran? Is your dad with you here?
No.
Okay. But, so in simple terms, does Allah make mistakes in the Quran?
No.
No. Okay. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala even presents this as a challenge in the Quran. He says, if this book is from anyone other than Allah, then find a contradiction therein, or produce a book like it. And we know this challenge was presented to the Quraysh, and they couldn't do it at the time. The Quraysh could not reproduce a Quran. You had characters like Musaylim al-Kadhab, for example, who tried to produce some kind of poetry, but it was very low quality, and even his own people laughed at him. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reduces the challenge. He says, if this book is from anyone other than Allah, then find a contradiction therein, or produce 10 chapters like it. And still the Arabs at the time couldn't do this, to the point where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reduces it to 1 chapter. And from then until now, this challenge hasn't been met. Now for me that's very, very compelling, because we knew then that there were people who wanted to see Islam to be extinguished, and for the last 1400 years we've seen many people who wanted to see Islam extinguished. And all they had to do was to write 3 lines of Quran. That was all they had to do, and they didn't do it. For me this is a very, very convincing proof. It's a testimony to the authorship of the Quran. Now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Baqarah, He says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ألف لام ميم ذلك الكتاب لا ريب فيه هدى للمتقين. And there are 2 ways of reading that second ayah. You can either say ذلك الكتاب لا ريب فيه هدى للمتقين, or you can read it as ذلك الكتاب لا ريب فيه هدى للمتقين. And they have different meanings. One meaning is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that this is a Quran whose authorship, there is no doubt, is definitely from Allah. And the other way of reading it is that what's in the Quran, there is no doubt about it. Meaning, so we can say from this ayah, that the authorship, that who wrote this Quran is certain, and what is in there is certain too. And this angle I'd never seen before, because as for anybody else from their belief system, they will have a book which they will claim to be sacred. I had the Bible. The Sikhs have their texts, the Hindus have their texts, the Jews have their texts. But how many of them, except for the Muslims, can say, 100% we know who wrote this book? How many? It's actually none, isn't it, except for the Muslims. Only the Muslims can say for sure, we know who wrote this book. We know this book is the speech of Allah. And for me this was very, very convincing, because before I wanted to be a Catholic because it felt right. But now I was seeing this argument that to be a Muslim means you have evidence for what you say. Real evidence, not just, it makes me feel nice, my parents are this religion, I really like Christmas, I like the presents. No, for real reasons. Now, it was only when I met some of this brother's cousins and extended family that I really got to see something that I'd never seen before, and that's how Muslims are with each other. How Muslims really are with each other. How does Allah say we should deal with each other? With the best of speech, that we should help each other out, that we don't use bad language with each other. Very, very positive qualities. When I saw his cousins and his extended friends, his Muslim friends together, I recognized they had a kind of brotherhood that I'd never seen before, and that it was open. Is there anyone on this planet that you hate so much that you don't want them to become Muslim? There's some people you really hate, right? There's some people you really hate, but you still want them to become Muslim. Of course. And why? Because Islam is the only thing that's going to get them to Jannah. Aside from the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they need to be Muslim, whether they realize it or not. They need to be Muslim. They need to be Muslim. So then, now we're asking the question, so really, what was the final thing that tipped me over the edge to make me Muslim? And the thing that really made me realize I had to be a Muslim was knowing that the Quran was the speech of Allah. Knowing for a fact. If you know for a fact the Quran is from Allah, you can't be anything else except for Muslim. You can't be anything else except for Muslim. And Allah doesn't make this a challenge where you have to have blind faith, where you just have to hope and pray and maybe. No, it's easy to believe because Allah gives you evidence. How many times have we seen those videos of people like Ahmed, Zakir Naik, these characters who bring us many of the ayats showing how there are scientific miracles in the Quran. All the time we hear about this. The one that got me, the one that pushed me over the edge, was how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He describes the mountains as the pins or the pegs which hold down the earth. Now some of the other things maybe you could say were scientific miracles or not. So for example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describing how the earth is on a fixed, how the sun is on a fixed path in space. Yeah? It's called the solar apex. Maybe if you were a good astronomer, you could have worked it out. But knowing that mountains go down as well as up is not something you could have known without sophisticated electronic equipment. Not at all. So when I heard that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had given this information in the Quran, I was amazed. I was amazed because for the Arabs at the time, that wasn't miraculous evidence. For the Arabs at the time, they had no way of verifying that, yeah? They would have said, well, that's an interesting way of describing the mountains. We thought maybe they held up the sky, but you're saying the opposite. They had no way to test that. Today, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in His wisdom has made it such that that piece of information in the Quran, you could only prove with modern science and modern technology. That's pretty amazing, isn't it? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not saying this is guidance and a miracle, miraculous knowledge for those people then, and if you weren't around then you kind of missed the boat. This is a book which is still revealing knowledge to us even till today. So for me, it was being able to prove that the Quran was from Allah which made me change. And why? Because if you recognize that the Quran is from Allah, you know you have to be a Muslim, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to be a Muslim. And you know you have to give da'wah too. I was reading this one ayah from Surah Al-Fussilat, verse 33. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala it's a very, everyone's got homework today, by the way. Everybody's homework today, when they go home, is to read Surah Al-Fussilat, and particularly this one verse. Except for those who are too young to read, but who want to talk. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَنْ أَحْسَنُ قَوْلًا مِمَّنْ دَعَا إِلَى اللَّهِ وَعَمِلَ صَالِحًا وَقَالَ إِنَّنِي مِنَ الْمُسْلِمِينَ. So in English, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, who is better in speech than the one who calls to Allah and does righteous deeds and says, I am from the Muslims. So how many times do we hear in Tarawih? We hear the Imam reading, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ لَهُمْ جَنَّاتٌ تَجْرِي مِنْ تَحْتِهَا الْأَنْهَارُ. Or many other ways of saying that these people, those who believe and do good deeds, that Jannah is for them, or that they're doing the right thing. Allah is pleased with them. Yeah. In this ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, who is better in speech than one who calls to Allah and does righteous deeds? Picture this in your mind. How can you call to Allah whilst doing unrighteous deeds? It's tricky, isn't it? So for example, if you were drinking a beer and saying, there's definitely a God and God's prohibited alcohol, you'd look like a bit of a hypocrite, right? You'd struggle to explain this. Or if you were smoking a joint or any of these kind of things, you'd struggle to explain these things, yeah? But the very, very interesting part about this ayah is the last one, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّنِي مِنَ الْمُسْلِمِينَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't pick words to put in the Qur'an by mistake or by chance or by accident. They're all picked very particularly. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could have said, Ana Muslim. Ana means I am, yeah? Ana Muslim. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could have said, Ana Muslim. I am Muslim. Singular, yeah? But he said here, Innani min al-Muslimin. I'm from the Muslims. He's saying here, our identity, when we're talking about, in the discussion of da'wah, our identity should be as an ummah. Our identity is an ummah. The artificial barriers we put up between us, the ones that push us away from Allah, aren't worth considering. They're not worth thinking about. So for example, to say I'm British before I'm Muslim would be a mistake. I should be saying, if I'm calling to Allah, I should say, I'm from the Muslims. I'm Muslim, I'm from the Muslims. This is the ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. This is what we should be saying. We shouldn't confuse our identity. So if I were to say there were a few things I would want anyone to remember from this talk, it would be that one, that to believe in Islam and to be certain about it is something that Allah has made very easy. That's the first point. The second point follows from this, that when someone challenges you with your Islam, like my friend was when he joined this Catholic school, there's nothing you have to worry about when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has got your back. The boys can relate to this. Sometimes, if it looks like situations getting hairy, there's certain people in your mind who you think, he's on my speed dial, I'll call him, he'll be here in 3 minutes. Yeah? You've got certain buddies who you think, I want him here now with me, because he knows how to deal with this, whatever the situation is. It's true, right? Who would you want more on your side than Allah? Who would you want more on your side? You can't be wrong by calling to Allah. You can't be wrong when you're saying that the Qur'an is the speech of Allah. You're not wrong on any of these issues. Even if you don't necessarily understand the details, you can't be wrong. So to say, I pray, I fast, yeah, I give zakat, I obey my parents, I obey the emir, if there was an emir, all of these issues, you're not wrong to say them. Maybe you don't know how to articulate that, but you're not wrong. So if someone's attacking you saying, well, why do you believe in this? And why do you believe in that? If you don't have the answer, don't worry. The answer is there in Islam, and you can find out later. And this happened sometimes. On a couple of occasions, it happened, where I thought I had him. I thought, that's it, he can't explain why he's allowed 4 wives. Yeah, I've got him now. And then the next day he would say to me, well, how many girlfriends are you allowed? Well, true, there's no limit. So, there were things where I thought I had him and I didn't. So, that's the second point, that all of these things in Islam, all of these matters, particularly the character of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we can explain them all. And if you don't know, don't worry, your father will. If your father doesn't know, the Imam will. If he doesn't know, the other Imam will. Someone will know the answer. There is an answer in all of these issues. And thirdly, is that we're saying here that when it comes to this issue of da'wah, sometimes people say things we don't want to hear, and they're rude, they're harsh, they're mean, they use bad language. They say your prophet was this, your Islam is barbaric, da 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 da. They've got all their statements. But no matter how much you dislike this person, you want for them to get Jannah more. You want them to become Muslim more. We know that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was sad and upset for some of the enemies of Islam because he wanted them to become Muslim too. Imagine that, someone who wants you dead, and you still pray, you still make dua that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guides them to Islam. because you don't want to see them in Jahannam. And finally, the really, really important point is that if this person who you're discussing with, and with my friend at school, it was over a period of years, if they then become Muslim, you're rewardable for all the good things they do. Let's take a picture now. Let's take a quick snapshot picture. In the Meccan period of Islam, how many people became Muslim? A few hundred, maybe. There's some people who dispute about the number. Let's say 200, rough figures, yeah? And in the Medinan period, how many people became Muslim? How many people were at the farewell, the last khutbah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Is estimated about 100,000, right? Right? Because when you're saying, "Ana Muslim," as an individual, you can become a victim. When you say, "Innani min al-Muslimin," when you're saying, "I'm from the Muslims," now you can say, "I'm Muslim," and that's what the Muslims are like. This is all of us together. This is how Islam is. Let's look further now. When the Sahaba, when they were giving Islam, when they were liberating lands, when they were freeing people from kufr and presenting them with Islam, we know that within 200 years they'd taken all of North Africa and the vast majority of Asham. Agreed? No one's saying no good. This is true. This is true. Yeah, they took all of North Africa, yeah? And the vast majority of Asham. So the Sahaba, the Tabi'een and Tabi'een, they are rewardable for all those people now in those lands who have been born into Islam instead of kufr. Imagine that. We're talking millions of people. Imagine you could take Shahada from millions of people. You would do it, right? You wouldn't think twice. You would say, "This is something I want to do now." Well, maybe you can't do it all in one lifetime. But for sure you know that that seed you plant by encouraging someone else to Islam, if they become Muslim, you're rewardable for what they do. And if they spread the message of Islam to others, likewise and so on. The most important point when we look at that piece of history actually is when we see that those lands had been reconquered by other powers, other forces, those Muslims didn't leave their Islam. They didn't leave their Islam. Imagine this. Imagine this. A small number of Muslims goes to a new area and those people become Muslims. Some do, some don't. Let's take Iraq as an example. When the Sahaba arrived there, in this new land, were they the majority or the minority of people? Minority, right? For a long time. Tiny minority. How many Muslims in UK now? 2 million or so, yeah? Alhamdulillah. But imagine if I were to tell you, within the next 70 years, 90% of the UK would be Muslim. You would stay, right? That's worth staying for, huh? That's worth staying for. So, the point here is that, as we're living here in the UK, one, that Islam, there is nothing you can't prove. And two, you can spread the message of Islam and be rewardable for it. And think about it, in Woking, how many Muslims? 20, what was the figure? 20,000, so? And everybody else, non-Muslim, right? There's no shortage of people to give da'wah to. There is no shortage of people to give da'wah to. There's not that many Sahaba buried in Mecca and Medina. Who were they going to give da'wah to after the death of Rasulullah ﷺ when everybody else is Muslim? They knew they had to go out. So this is the way we should think about it. Who runs their own business here? Who runs a business? No one? No one has their own business? Okay. Modest, mashallah, okay. Okay, but if you're looking at two jobs, one has a 25k salary, one has a 50k salary, and it's the same job, which are you taking? The 50k salary, yeah? It sounds... You give it all in sadaqah, yeah? 25k extra sadaqah, yeah? Of course, it's a no-brainer, right? It's a no-brainer. So if you were a Sahaba at the time of Rasulullah ﷺ, and then after his death, and there was no one for you to give da'wah to in Medina or Mecca, what would you do? You would go, and you would go to the other lands and you would tell those people too. There is no shortage of people who we can give Islam to here in the UK. So inshallah, we will be of those people who are firm and steadfast and try and give other Muslims confidence to carry this call to the non-Muslims here in the UK, inshallah.